stories are not going to quite be up to snuff, but
Your stories will help him learn how to do that better. So you're very important.
But you're very impressive. Well,
Oh,
I don't have any, sorry. It's very expensive these days.
So if we could start out and you can just kind of tell me, where did you grow up and what kind of family did you have?
All right, so I grew up in Victoria, Texas, and I knew a lot of people growing up like Mrs. McCaney and the Lacks my whole life. Grew up here with terrific parents. Went to Trinity Episcopal, went to Crane, went to Victoria High, and then I went to Southwestern University in Georgetown, Texas, and got my degree in business administration.
So what was your first job?
My first paying job.
Paying job, yes. We've all had those not paying jobs.
So I did do some filing and things like that for Zarsky Lumber when I was probably in junior high, but my first paying job was at Mamselle. If any of you remember the clothing store Mamselle, I started working there when I was about 15, selling clothes.
That's awesome. And so then what do you consider your greatest accomplishment in your professional life and why?
So I guess we should back up because not everyone knows the Zarsky Lumber.
If you want to, this is just an open chat at the Sparks thing, so go ahead.
So my family had an interest in Zarsky Lumber Company, and that company started in 1928. My father helped grow the company, and that's always been a part of my life. Always. I mean, we couldn't go out to dinner in my childhood without circling the lumberyard. I mean, that was what you did.
I sent her a photo the other day when I was in Port A and I saw the new Zarsky building. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So yeah, she can't escape it. It's true.
Yeah, we have a beautiful lumberyard in Port Aransas, but my whole life was being a part of the lumberyard. So what was my greatest accomplishment? Gosh, jumping way ahead, when I finally did work for Zarsky Lumber as a young adult, I came in and started working for my father. And one thing that I encouraged him to do, because I wasn't in charge yet, was to establish a 401k for the employees. And that doesn't sound like much, but by the time I sold the company, I could not be more proud that some of these guys, and I don't want to say just a forklift driver because I have more respect for them than many other people who you would consider to be far more successful. But some of these forklift drivers or just labor had $125,000 in their 401k. And they would not have had that. I'm certain of it. And to me, that was one of my greatest accomplishments, was that these men, mostly men, had a really nice nest egg because of something that we put into place.
Well, that tells you a lot about Cally right here, is that she implemented that, and she's always thinking about others. And I love that you said not just a forklift driver, that you had so much respect. And I respect you so much as being a part of this community, as a businesswoman, and also just as a friend, and knowing you because you're so thoughtful and you put other people first. And creating that's huge for people to have a 401k so they actually can retire. They can do certain things in their life. So that is just really amazing.
Well, and my father passed away in 2013, and many people came up to me in the months that followed that would tell me about my father giving them an opportunity and telling me things like, my son went to college because your dad gave me a job. Your dad gave me an opportunity. Because you have to think back in the era that all the time that has passed. But so many people came to me and thanked me for my dad and what he did to help their families progress and grow. And that's more important to me than anything else.
Well, that's a true legacy, right? And what's interesting, I don't know if you've heard this or not, or if you know, people say the same thing about you. So you're carrying on that family legacy, which is really, really something special. So that to me, when you're building a business and a company, as you point out, it's more than that. You get to know these people. They're part of your family, basically, extended family. And the fact that your father, as well as you guys all created something as a family together for the greater good of your employees. And that speaks measures about you and your whole family.
Well, and back to the just a forklift driver, I swear to you, when your guys are hauling sheetrock and it's 99 degrees and it's a 98% humidity, God bless them. You couldn't run a business without the people that do that kind of work. And I think it's in Proverbs that it talks about knowing the name of your sheep and knowing your flock. I knew the first and last names of every single one of those employees, and I respected them. I didn't care what their education level was or where they came from, but you cannot have a business without respecting every single person that works for you.
And right there, that is something that all of us should take away when you have a business. And I know many of you out there do this as well. You're great examples too. But to have this generational thing where you're putting your employees first and you're respecting them and you know how valuable they are, that is one of the key things when you have a business, is to do that. Because like you said, without them, you can't function.
That's right.
So it's definitely a partnership and an extended part of your family. And so as we're talking about this, it's kind of making me think about your journey with Zarsky Lumber, and then what happened after that, and kind of where has it led you to in your life?
Well, so when I was the president of the company, we were profitable and having a great time. I had a terrific leadership group with me that I relied on immensely, and I was not for sale. I got a phone call one day from a lumber company here in Texas that I knew, and they asked me if I was interested in selling, and I said, no, I'm making money. I'm having a good time. It's a lot of fun. But then a strange coincidence was that the very next day, a different person called me and asked me if I was for sale. So I then had to look at that, and in the end, I had 3 buyers, and I went with the buyer that may have been the low bidder, but I trusted them to take care of my employees because these people were my family. And I went with Kodiak Building Partners, and it's been an excellent partnership. Their model is that the companies that they acquire get to remain the companies that they acquired. They respect the legacy. They don't change your name. They don't change the way you do things. You know, they tweak it a little bit, and some things have to come out of the corporate office. But even if I left money on the table, I am very comfortable with the decision to sell to this company. I mean, they have been wonderful stewards of my legacy, and I don't regret it.
And once again, you were worried about the welfare of your employees and the people that have been there in your legacy that you built, and you put that first. And that is just one of the many reasons that I know people in this community respect you as well as myself. And so as you sold that, what did that process feel like as you went through that journey of selling something and then going to the next level of what you were doing?
So fortunately for me, probably around 2000, probably after the recession, so I'm guessing around 2010 or so, we had a potential buyer at that point that also had come to us, and my father was still alive at that time and was pretty with it, and we entertained the idea very seriously, and we ultimately decided that it would be a good idea to sell. And then the buyer changed what they were doing in their model, and it ended up not happening. So that actually was in my favor, because then in 2014, when I had these buyers coming to me, I kind of felt like I already had my dad's blessing. I think that if I had not, it would have been a much more emotional experience, but it really wasn't. It was a completely comfortable business decision, and the process to sell it was just really getting your books together and getting everything lined up to go. And again, the buyer was a fabulous choice. So now I work for them. Most of the companies that they buy, for the most part, the sellers choose to stay in the leadership role of their companies. But as a lifestyle decision, I didn't want to continue running the company if I wasn't the boss. So I work for them in a capacity of communications and culture. I have a fancy title, but this Kodiak acquires companies throughout the country that are building material distributors in some fashion. It's not all lumber yards. And they continue to acquire profitable companies, and we are now at over 6,000 employees. So some of the things, as I said, they try to allow their companies to remain autonomous, but you have to have a few things come from corporate. So I help communicate those things to the employees. And I created an app, not on the scientific end of it, no. Conceptually, I created an app because in the lumber industry and in the building material industry, about 2/3 of your employees do not sit at a desk. So those people don't have email and they don't have computers. So when you're trying to communicate to 6,000 people, most of whom don't sit at a desk, I was really struggling. So we created an app because everyone has a phone. Everyone has a cell phone. So if I need to get something out to people regarding the 401k or our employee assistance fund or whatever it may be, I create the post and they get a notification on their phone, and then they're able to get the news because there's no other way to reach them. And you can't rely on the store managers or the HR managers or the different people to disseminate all the information. So that's been a great tool that we use daily.
That is amazing. She's just like, oh, created an app, came up with this idea. I mean, she's so humble. But also, what I love about it is that you had the insight to see a need that the company had as a whole, and you did something about it. And who better to work with these companies than somebody that you know this industry backwards, forwards, you've lived it literally your entire life. So for me, if you approached me and I was in that position, I would feel very comfortable with you. So they couldn't have picked anyone better, obviously. You know, you're amazing at what you do. And I love that you care about these companies that your company is acquiring because you've been in that position and you know how that feels, and you've also grown up in it, but you also thought, hey, what's an idea that I can do to make it all work more smoothly for the company and also the people with these companies that are working with us and that we're acquiring, and to make it go better. And so I just love that so much, how innovative you are and how much you care about your employees. It's really cool. And when we're talking about takeaways, I've just learned so much that I didn't even know. It's amazing.
Thank you. And I don't consider myself innovative, but
you created an app. Are you kidding me?
Well,
it's amazing.
But one thing that should be obvious to all of us, but it's not that easy, is I have to create these posts in Spanish. So
that definitely is not easy.
No, and one thing that my father told me to do was to continue taking Spanish, but I took French because, that's really useful.
I think most of us think, I'm going to move to Paris and learn French and be there. So, it's this idea.
Thank goodness for my Trinity Episcopal Spanish education through 5th grade, but that doesn't take you far enough. So that is a challenge, but I try very hard to get everything in Spanish because a large percentage of our deskless employees, Spanish is their first language. And if my job is to communicate to them, I've got to figure out how to do that.
That's awesome. And then, so tell me, I know that you are the first woman on a lot of boards. And what does that look like, and how did your journey take you there?
Well, I think truly that's just timing on when I entered the workforce. I've been the first woman president of trade associations, both state and national. And that, rather than talking about me being a woman, I'd rather talk about the importance of associations. I mean, every industry has an association. I'm sure the newspaper people do. I'm sure the furniture people do. The chicken people do. Yeah, I'm not kidding. But because my father, as amazing as a businessman that he was and a terrific human being, he wasn't a teacher. I mean, he felt like I should have learned everything by osmosis. I mean, there's probably a lot of dads out there that you just think your kids should know. But by being involved in associations in the building material industry, you could go to seminars, you could go to roundtable discussions, you could talk to people who aren't your competitors. You're not going to divulge any trade secrets that are going to harm your way of doing business, but I think that has been a huge part of my success. And also, I convinced my father, who was, and I keep pointing to some of the people that I know, but the generation where you just kept your financial information very close to the vest, and you didn't share that kind of information. But I convinced my dad to let me be a part of a roundtable, which was comprised of successful lumber dealers from around the country, and we had a moderator that taught all of us about the benchmarks of where you should be. You know, if you're doing $10 million in business, you should probably have this many employees, you should have this many trucks, you know, your turns, your inventory turns should be at this level, you know, these should be the ratios, and all these things that no one taught me because I was supposed to just know it. But these roundtables were the key to my success. I mean, I really encourage you to get out there and talk to people in your same industry and learn what the norms are, what you should be striving for, and then with an exchange with one another, you can learn how to get there. And in those roundtables, even if a lumber dealer is in Boston, Massachusetts, they might have some logistical things that are different as far as deliveries in a giant city versus us delivering to Cuero. But the same problems are the same problems are the same problems. And those roundtables, I couldn't have done it without that experience and that knowledge and those challenges and being accountable to those other lumber dealers. Because you'd meet every quarter or twice a year or so, and they would say, well, how are your turns doing? And you'd have to show them your books. Here we are.
It's that accountability buddy. Someone told me that word the other day. It's genius. But I really agree with that. It's having that abundance mindset, not that lack mindset, and working with one another. We've been bringing together a lot of businesses here that do the same thing, but they realize that they can actually work together in some ways and learn about each other's problems and not feel so alone in what they're doing. And they can also realize the targets and goals they should be hitting. So you hit the nail on the head, metaphor intended, right? But I think it's one of those things to where I really took away from you the other day when you did the news interview, and then when we talked at lunch about when I asked her to do the fireside chat. She was talking about that it really wasn't a sex issue for her as well as male or female in the industry, that it was more that she knew what she was doing and she was educated in what she was doing, and so she was respected, and that's how she got far. She didn't really look at it as a male-female thing. And I hadn't really heard that perspective before, but I respect that so much because you knew what you were doing in that industry, and when you walked in a room, people knew you could hold your own. And that's really something amazing, and I do respect that so much.
Well, and there are things you lack as a woman in this particular industry. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. But I surrounded myself with people who knew the things I didn't know. And you can't be too proud and have a big ego. After my dad turned things over to me, I had my core of my 3 other vice presidents, and those guys filled the gaps that I didn't possess. And we were a team, and we made decisions together, and we trusted one another. And prior to my running the company, things were a little bit looser, and I just needed, the way I operate, I needed things to be a little more regimented. And I learned right off the bat that you've got to put things on the calendar to make them happen. And that sounds elementary. I mean, y'all probably already know that. But with the very familiar relationship I had with my vice presidents, it's easy to say, okay, well, we'll talk about that later. But no, at the beginning of the year, we put down every date that we were going to meet, and we were going to talk about what was going on, and that just made all the difference in the world, because otherwise, well, yeah, we'll talk about that later, But making it in black and white on the old-fashioned paper calendar, not the electronic version, was just another component of why things worked.
And you found how you guys got in your groove and what worked for you. And I think that's so important in business, is to work as a cohesive team, not be in competition, and find out what tools work best for you. And you did that, and you utilized that. And so I'm curious, how would you define success?
I think that if you are happy to get up in the morning and go do whatever it is that you're supposed to do, then you're successful.
That is a great answer. I could not agree more. That is awesome. So do you have any books that you've read lately that you could recommend to us?
Not lately. But there's some really good books, and they're not very highbrow, like this gentleman who's changing the world was reading. But Malcolm Gladwell, I really like his books. I mean, they're not highbrow stuff, but the information in there is just fascinating. I do love his books. And another one is the Zappos book of Delivering Happiness. It's about the company culture, which is huge. That's a good one.
Can you tell me a little bit about company culture?
Well, it's what drives the success of your company. I mean, do you know the expression, culture eats strategy for breakfast? It's the truth. I mean, you can plan all day long, but if your employees hate you, or if you don't respect your employees, I mean, I think Chick-fil-A is probably a great source of information about company culture. But back to respecting the guys that haul the sheetrock, respecting the person that cleans the bathrooms. I mean, it's all got to be mutual respect. You've all got to be in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. And without that, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters.
That's so true. And I think that what you've done with your company and the company that you're with now, you really have found a way to keep that company culture going and keep that not only going for the company that you did own and what you're working for now, but also share it with us so that if we're out there, we can remember that that is so vital and so important to the success of our business. So I'm curious, if you were graduating college today, what would you do?
I don't know if I would do anything differently because everything you do leads you to where you are today. And you learn, hopefully, I guess the goal is to learn from all the steps along the way, the mistakes you made or the poor choices or just youth. I think that you are who you are because of what you've been through.
I couldn't agree more. And so I'm just curious for you, you've done so many really amazing things and innovative things, and so many people respect you. And I'm curious, who do you respect and who do you find innovative that you've really taken as a mentor and that you really learned a lot from in your life?
Well, of course, my parents were fabulous. No question about that. But professionally, in addition to my father, the lady that ran the round tables that I went to, her name is Ruth Kellick Grubbs, and she is just a super smart person who I respect a lot. She invented this term she calls OTIF, O-T-I-F, on time and in full. And it's a measurement in the lumber business or any business, anyone can use it. Are you delivering everything on time and in full? And that's the goal, is to be 100% OTIF. But she is a remarkable woman around my age who just doesn't pull any punches, and I admire her quite a bit.
And I just learned something, OTIF. That is great. I'm going to start using that. And I do believe that. I tell a lot of people and people who I've hired over the years that just being on time, you're winning more than most people. And show up early, because respecting someone's time is so important. But I love that delivering in full. Bring everything that you've got and make sure that you actually deliver what you say you're going to deliver. And then some if you want to, which is always good, that icing on top. So I'm curious for Victoria, what would you like to see for Victoria's future and where we're growing and where we're going?
I'll be honest with you, this is my home. And when I left for college, it was 1986. So now you can calculate my age. So I moved to Georgetown, Texas, and you meet people from all over, and they would ask where you're from. Well, where's Victoria? How big is it? At that point in time, Victoria was 50,000 people. So here I come back as an adult. Years and years and years and years have passed. I'm still here, and the population is not a whole lot more than 50,000 people. And that's kind of sad, because I think this is a fabulous town. But I am very excited about what's going on right now. I mean, I really feel it. I feel the energy in this community. I feel like we're on the cusp. I think that the Innovation Collective is a big part of that. Where's Mike ATN? I think that the city government and the elected people. I just think we are all in the groove, and we are on the same boat, as I described earlier, and rowing in the same direction. And I look forward to what's happening. I have a daughter that will graduate from college next December, and I think now it's possible she could come back.
Woohoo.
I never would have thought that, but I'm very encouraged.
And I feel the same way, and I know a lot of you have shared with me, you do as well, the energy shift and all of the things that are going on, and people are getting excited, and things are happening, and it's unlike anything I've ever seen. Like you even said that, and if you feel that, I feel that, and I know a lot of you have come to me with the same thing. That means it's happening, guys. This is exciting times. We are living a part of big history and a big change, but a change in a great way where our community, we're still all working together. We still have the core of what makes us great is all the people here, but we're also saying, hey, you know what? Our city is capable. We're the crossroads, but we don't have to be 2 hours to go somewhere great. Why aren't we 2 hours where you can travel to come to us and come somewhere great? And I see that happening, and it's really exciting. And you are just so innovative yourself with how you do things and how you think about things as a business owner, but just as a person, always putting people first. I know you do so much work with nonprofits, as well as just every time that I see you, you're just thinking about people and how you could help them and help them grow, and just thinking about your employees. And I know for me, I took away so much from this of learning about culture, and that is a key point, but also learning that your employees are so important. Is there any advice that you would give to an existing business owner or a new business owner starting out, the one thing that they should really know, the best piece of advice you could give? Not to put too much pressure on you, I know.
Golly, we could talk about debt, keeping a lot of cash. That's hard, because as far as a professional flaw of mine, is I do think that I am too risk averse. I was always maybe a little bit too cautious, maybe too fiscally conservative to take some risks that perhaps I should have. So I don't know if I would go down that path. So I think I'll talk more about employees and being very, very careful in your hiring, and take your time on the hiring end, but be quick to fire. That sounds harsh, but a bad employee will drag down the whole group. And I think that if you really take your time and hire the right people, that can make a big difference in your business.
And that's so true, because if you have a great team that works as a cohesive unit together, things go so much smoother. You're an example of that. And I just appreciate your insight